שלום, אנחנו כאן בסינמטק תל אביב עם סרה פולי, אחת השחקניות הצעירות הכי מוערכות ואיכותיות בקולנוע האמריקאי ובכלל, ולאחרונה, מהשנה שעברה, גם בימאית ותסריטאית מצוינת עם הרחק ממנה סרט הביקורים שלה. Hello, Sarah.
Hello. All the time I was acting until I was about 20, I had no idea that I wanted to make my own films. And when I was 20, I made a short film kind of on a whim, and really through the process of making that first short film, I realized it was what I wanted to do. Adam McGoyan was a huge influence on me because I was in two of his films when I was a teenager, once when I was 14 and once when I was 17. And I think it was through him I really discovered that making films could be something meaningful and a way of provoking an exchange or conversation or a dialogue and talk about things that were kind of difficult. So I think probably working with him was like a sort of main inspiration for me.
You're very picky with your choices as an actress. I mean, what attracts you within a character or within a script?
I guess the first thing for me now is the filmmaker, because I sort of feel like, in a way, acting for me is a kind of film school for myself in terms of making my own films. So I always want to work with filmmakers who I think are testing boundaries or who are trying to convey something that's important to them, or artists that I just generally respect.
There's something, I don't know, always very melancholic and very, the films are very delicate, and is that something that you pursue as an actor, or?
I guess so. I think in a way, like, my first real experiences acting after acting as a child were with Adam. So in those films, especially in The Sweet Hereafter, I think through playing that character, I think I really explored and excavated a lot of my own grief, and it became a way of talking about very private things, but in this public way that was kind of secret as well, because you're speaking through a character, you're not speaking about yourself. But I think for me it was like a way of getting to know parts of myself that were very difficult for me. And I think it's remained like in that realm for me of like a place to go to sort of like discover things about yourself or ask yourself questions or challenge yourself in some way. For me, like, filmmaking was a really different process than acting. Like, it's much less cathartic in a way, like that sense of like, excavating something emotional, I think doesn't really happen when you're making a film in the same way. For me, it was like much more challenging on a lot of other levels, and this idea of like trying to take this like idea or this tone or this story and somehow like sort of marshal it through all of the obstacles that are created.
And what attracted you in that story? I mean, it's a story about it's a very human story, but I mean, you're very young, and how can someone so young can relate to such, I don't know, such a topic?
For me, what was really fascinating was the story of a marriage and like what happens to a marriage after many decades, and what happens to love when it's been through real life and has been tested and battered against the rocks. And so I think for me, like, maybe being, in a way because I was young, I think I was really interested in looking forward at what love could look like after that amount of time. I read the story and it really stayed with me, and just eventually over time was sort of forming and reforming itself into a film.
As an actress, how was it for you working with Julie Christie? I mean,
it was amazing. I mean, she's somebody that I knew for quite a while before making the film, and she was somebody who, it was so great to have her there for that experience, not just because of the performance she gave, which I really love, but because she was constantly kind of pushing me to be strong and pushing me to like, really own the role of being the filmmaker. And for like a 27-year-old woman making her first film, to have somebody like that really like making you take a leadership role was pretty great.
Do you have like a new project?
I have a few. I don't know which one I'm going to do first, but definitely I definitely want to keep making films. I'd like to just initiate my own projects and write my own films or find stories that appeal to me as opposed to like having somebody else instigate them. I don't want to limit myself to a genre or a tone, and in a way, like, I think as an actor, my work is to kind of challenge myself to, like, not to be lighter, but to be able to do that. Like, I'd like to sort of exercise that part of myself as well because it exists. And then as a filmmaker too, like, I think probably I'll make mostly dramas, but I wouldn't rule out at some point also making a comedy at some point.